let's have a look at the answer to question 1A, part 3. So our question here is to think about an assumption that we made for the previous question and discuss whether that assumption is valid. So what I need to remember is I'm dealing with uniform distributions. And so I need to ask myself, what assumptions do the uniform distribution have? And the only assumption that they have is that of independence. So what we need to do is identify what is the events that are independent. And we've got two events. We've got one which talks about having a cold lunch, and the other that talks about the event of having a cold dinner. So the question we've got to ask ourselves is, are these independent? And what we need to do is think about in real life. We're talking about data from a hospital, so delivering meals. So what usually happens in most hospitals, if I think about, for example, just a massive, great big floor plan, there might be a ward over here, and there might be another ward over there, etc. So there's a number of different wards around, and then there's one location where the kitchen is. And so if I think about what happens is the kitchen will cook the food, and then it goes off and delivers them to each of the different wards. So if I think about which of these wards are most likely to get the cold meals, I would say that these ones down here, the further away they are, the more likely they are to get the cold meals. Whereas the ones that are close by the kitchen, I would say they're more likely to get hot meals because they're quite close by. So this is what I want to be able to discuss in my assumption, in this discussion here. And so I want to be able to talk about the assumption itself. So I've got to decide, I've got to identify what the assumption is, and then I need to discuss whether it is likely to be valid. Okay, so identifying, that's this first part. I'm identified by two events, cold lunch and cold dinner. Are they independent? That's what the assumption is. And then I'm going to discuss that. So I assume that the events of having a cold lunch and a cold dinner are independent. So that's what we are assuming. However, they may not be independent because, and this is where we would go on and write down our reasoning why. So I've just given one example, but you could have other examples that you would have as well. And so that's what I want to see, is I want to see you identify the assumption and tell me why it is or is not valid. Okay.